Discover the incredible moment. A young woman's sign language transforms a billionaire boss's destiny. Sarah Thompson sat quietly in her cubicle, surrounded by the incessant hum of Silicon Valley's most innovative tech firm. Though she had been hired to bridge the gap between Jack Thompson, the unyielding billionaire at the helm, and his deaf daughter, Lily, it felt more like being a ghost in a crowded room. Every time she caught Jack's gaze, cold, focused, and utterly disconnected, she felt a rush of despair clawing at her insides. Here she was, tasked with knitting together broken connections, yet feeling as if her own purpose was lost among the prestigious titles and affluence that buzzed around her. Lily's bright eyes lingered in Sarah's thoughts like a bittersweet melody. The way the little girl looked up at her father, with a mix of hope and confusion, broke her heart. They shared moments filled with laughter, but each exchange pushed Jack's walls higher. Did he even care? As much as Sarah wanted the job to represent professional growth, it felt increasingly like a battle of fierce internal struggle that shattered her ambition and triggered an ugly flicker of self-doubt. Was being an interpreter enough? Did they see her only as a peripheral figure rather than a vital part of their world? At the next board meeting, the atmosphere turned suffocating as Jack presented his latest vision for the company. Sarah felt her heartbeat quicken every time Jack faltered with Lily's questions, feeling the gravity of his silence. She remembered how, just last week, Jack's icy demeanor thawed briefly when Lily had signed a joke, igniting a glimmer of joy that momentarily pierced his steely exterior. With that laughter, there came a fleeting glimpse of the father he could be yet. Those moments were like sand slipping through her fingers, fragile and fleeting. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With every project update, Sarah noticed the glances of her affluent colleagues, a mix of disdain and dismissal. To them, her profession seemed insignificant compared to attaining wealth and power. The tension gripped her like a vice, pressed on by the fear of confirming their judgments while craving validation for her impact in this gilded world. Did they realize the stakes? Did they even care? The impending scandal rattled her thoughts like an approaching storm. Jack's empire was one step away from collapse, a revelation that unsettled her deeply. She recalled Lily's innocent laughter, her trusting gaze, and the stark contrast with the boardroom shadows. Making a choice between professional decorum and the emotional turmoil of a child's heart weighed on her like shackles. Torn between her moral compass and the unforgiving corporate landscape, she felt the growing urgency within herself that as the meeting approached its peak of chaos, Sarah prepared to fight for what mattered, a deeper bond between father and daughter amidst lurking betrayal. The tension wrapped around her, each breath heavier, every heartbeat more purposeful. Jack would either see her strength or be blinded by the empire he had built. If only he could just look past his own ambition and see the true success that lingers in lifelines of love. But as she prepared to speak, shadows loomed over them all, waiting to reveal just how much time they had left to mend what was broken. With a sense of unwavering determination, Sarah squared her shoulders and steeled herself for the confrontation ahead. The cacophony of raised voices and urgent whispers around the boardroom ebbed for an instant as she took a step forward. She could feel the weight of Jack's skepticism bearing down on her, but it was Lily's innocent spirit that surged through her veins, pushing away her trepidation. "Jack," she began, her hands moving into the fluid gestures of sign language. "Lily needs to understand what is happening." Each sign was infused with her conviction. She could see the registries of confusion and concern flickering in his eyes. She deserves to know the risk to her world, to her family. You can't just hide from this anymore. For a moment, the room held its breath. Jack took in her words, and in that space, it felt as though everything pivoted on a single point of clarity. It was a moment of vulnerability, like a crack in the armor he had built around himself. Yet, he shifted uncomfortably, avoiding her gaze, anger and embarrassment flickering across his features. It was clear he wasn't ready to confront the tumult brewing beneath the surface. Unyielding, Sarah pressed on. Your vision for this company is magnificent, Jack. But you have a more immediate responsibility, Lily. Her voice was steady, the challenge laid bare before him. Do you want her to grow up without knowing you? Without feeling your love? The words landed heavily, reverberating through the air. Anger flashed in Jack's eyes, battling with a flicker of something more vulnerable. Regardless of his bond with corporate success, the stakes were driven by the person he could become, not just as a businessman but as a father. Hypothetically, if he could seize the moment, what else might he uncover about himself? The other board members fidgeted, sensing the boiling tension. Many exchanged glances of disbelief, unaware that the heart of the matter extended far beyond balance sheets and profit margins. Silence enveloped them, allowing Sarah's message to simmer like heat on a stove, threatening to boil over. Jack's breath hitched as he leaned back, pondering the onslaught of conflicting emotions swirling within him. Maybe, just maybe, he hadn't considered that trusting the stranger his employee could be the key to unlocking his paternal instincts, the very roots that connected him to both Lily and to life beyond the sterile walls of the corporate empire he had built. Sarah saw a flicker of realization break through Jack's frustration, but she dared not relent. It's time to choose courage over comfort, Jack. Show Lily that she matters. Show her that you care. The boardroom suddenly felt less like a battleground where ambition clashed and more like a sacred ground where hearts could reveal themselves. Slowly, Jack began to lower his guard, the weight of his previous arrogance lessening with each sign Sarah articulated. Yet, just as the tide seemed to shift, a low murmur of anxiety rippled through the room as the door swung open. An unexpected visitor, a rival investor known for his ruthless tactics, walked in, casting a shadow over Sarah's fleeting hope. Jack's focus snapped back to the immediate threat, his demeanor hardening once more. What are you doing here? Jack barked, his eyes narrowing. The momentary connection between father and daughter slipped away, replaced by cold, strategic tension as Jack readied himself for battle. And in the second that followed, Sarah realized the stakes had just multiplied. She had ignited a flicker of hope within Jack, and now it was in grave danger of being extinguished. What would it take to fan that flame back to life? As she contemplated the challenge ahead, a determined resolve crystallized within her. She would not let the opportunity to forge a bond slip away. The battle for Jack's humanity had only just begun. Jack's heart raced as he shifted his focus from the intruder to the myriad of unspoken stakes that hung in the room. The air had become thick with unexpressed thoughts, like a hurricane waiting to unleash its fury. Suddenly, the focus seemed to pivot away from his relationship with Lily and toward defending everything he had built. Let us keep this professional, Jack snapped, the resolve in his voice a desperate attempt to re-establish control. He clenched his fists, the tension coiling within him like a tightly wound spring. He felt the tide of emotions crashing against the walls he had so carefully constructed, threatening to submerge him. The rival investor ambled in, a smug smile plastered across his face, calculating the tension. I heard there's quite the drama unfolding here, he drawled, eyes glimmering with the satisfaction of opportunism. You must be having quite the internal crisis, Jack. The man's words slithered through the air, and for a brief moment, Sarah saw Jack's jaw tighten as he forced himself to meet the man's gaze. But Sarah stood resolute, unwilling to let the moment slip through their fingers. Her eyes shifted to Jack, seeking any remaining hint of vulnerability. You don't have to choose between your business and your daughter, she signed, her intentions clear. Jack's defenses began to crumble inch by inch. He was at war not just with the rival but with himself. The long-buried emotions emerged, setting up a battleground of conflicting loyalties. He opened his mouth, then closed it, grappling with what to say. How had it come to this? Meanwhile, the rival investor pressed on, feeding off Jack's evident agitation. You still think your little company can stand against mine? It's about time someone showed you reality. His voice dripped with condescension, each word a dagger aimed directly at Jack's fractured pride. The audacity of the challenge seemed to rejuvenate Jack's competitive spirit, even as the roots of personal responsibility tangled deeper into his psyche. Sarah recognized Jack's struggle. This was a defining moment not just for his business, but for what kind of man he would choose to be. She refused to let his choices be dictated by fear or the taunts of an outsider. "Jack," she signed urgently, "this is not just about business. Lily needs you to fight for her knowing who you really are." Suddenly, the room felt electric. Jack's gaze dropped to the ground, his thoughts a chaotic whirlwind of ambition and paternal instinct. She could see him wrestling internally, the breaking down of barriers as he considered if he could dare embrace the messiness of life's dualities. In that fleeting moment, Sarah felt a swell of hope. Jack's gaze slowly met hers, a silent acknowledgement of a joint struggle. It was a realization that perhaps vulnerability could coexist with strength. Just as he began to shift, wrestling with a decision that could alter his path irrevocably, the investor scoffed, barely allowing room for contemplation. "Are you really going to let a subordinate change your mind? This isn't about feelings, Jack. It's about the hard reality of business." The noise around them faded, and Jack looked like he was on the verge of snapping back, but the inner dialogue remained tangled. Could he accept the challenge, not only from the rival but from the commitment of being a father? The stakes were unimaginably high. Could he rebirth an identity beyond corporate gain? With resolve slowly bubbling back to the surface, Jack finally exhaled deeply, a decision sparking to life in the depths of his intentions. Before he could speak, however, the rival's laughter echoed ominously around the room. "Ready to fold? I'd hate to see you lose everything." The tension reached a boiling point, and Jack took a step toward the intruder, determination replacing uncertainty. Sarah held her breath, her own heartbeat paralleling the tumultuous thrumming of Jack's resolve. It was time for him to confront not just the rival, but the man he could be for Lily. As anticipation pulsed in the room, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that the next moments would shape not only Jack's future but her own. Would he step into the light, into fatherhood, or would he retreat back into the shadows, dodging the painful truths of love and responsibility? Both monumental revelations loomed just beyond the horizon, and within the cracks of conflict, an answer awaited to be unveiled. Jack's gaze locked onto the rival, the atmosphere thickening with unspoken possibilities. The taunts stung, but beneath the surface, they ignited something primal. He was not just a businessman facing competition. He was a father struggling against the confines of his own choices. The ever-tightening grips of ambition and paternal instinct clashed, leaving him in a turbulent limbo. "Enough," Jack finally said, his voice steady yet tinged with an urgency that resonated beyond the boardroom walls. With each word, he dismantled the hesitation that threatened to consume him. He drew on a well he believed had long since dried up, a reservoir of confidence built over years of triumphs. This was his identity, not just as a corporate leader but as a man of honor. The rival raised an eyebrow, skepticism curling his lips. "Really, Jack? This is your answer? A last-minute surge of desperate emotion?" His derision masked an underlying apprehension. Jack saw it. This man was a shark who thrived on the scent of fear. But Jack could not afford to be baited. That was the first lesson he'd learned in business. "Let me remind you of something," Jack said, stepping forward, taking command of the space. "I fought battles bigger than you could ever imagine. I've built this company from the ground up. It's not just about profits. It's about those who depend on us." The truth resonated in every word, striking a chord of conviction deep inside him. As the rival floundered for a retort, Jack sensed a shift not just in the rival's demeanor but internally as well. Perhaps this confrontation was more than a mere negotiation. It was an exploration of his courage, a reawakening of who he aspired to be. Sarah's unwavering support loomed in the back of his mind, pushing him to confront the layers of himself he had long ignored. His thoughts drifted momentarily to Lily. He pictured her bright smile, the way her laughter filled the voids in his life, and he realized that if he wanted to be the father she deserved, he needed to embrace every part of himself, not just the ruthless businessman. This was about modeling strength through vulnerability. "Let us take this outside," Jack suggested, an unexpected calm washing over him. The idea of leaving the confines of the office felt liberating. I won't let you drag my family into this pit of corporate disdain. There was a finality in his tone, a boundary he was now determined to uphold. They were no longer merely adversaries in a boardroom. This was deeply personal. The rival scoffed, attempting to mask his unease with bravado. "You're making a mistake, Jack." But Jack was no longer listening. He could feel a fire igniting, a renewed sense of purpose filling him as he stepped into the nameless potential of his future. With each stride, the chaos of his internal battles began to ebb. This wasn't just about defeating an opponent. It was about reclaiming his narratives, the ones that had been shaped by others, the scars that had been left unattended. He was becoming aware of the latent power within him, waiting to be honed. Jack turned back briefly, catching Sarah's eye. A flicker of understanding passed between them. She knew this wasn't just an external conflict, but a quest for his true self. The look inspired him to confront the many dimensions of his identity: fatherhood, ambition, vulnerability. As he stepped through the office door, Jack felt an unsettling mixture of dread and exhilaration. The weight of expectation loomed larger than ever. It wasn't just a rivalry he faced. It was the embodiment of everything that had defined him until now. He had learned one crucial lesson today. Triumph needed to extend beyond achievements. The battle against his rival was just beginning, but the greater war was against the narratives that had defined him. And with every step forward, Jack was determined to forge a new path, one that interwove the complexities of ambition with the singular drive to be the father Lily deserved. Just as he reached the exit, a thought pierced through the uncertainty, a revelation. The moment he faced the man outside, Jack would not just fight for his business. He would fight for his soul. Could one confrontation define not just his career, but the kind of father and man he could become? Would he rise, tempered and transformed by both his failures and his triumphs? Or would he be reduced to the shadows of his past? The lessons of his journey were just beginning to unfurl, and he felt the anticipation swell in his chest. It was time to ignite the courage within, to step boldly toward the ultimate test that awaited him, one that would unravel the true essence of his identity. What he didn't yet know was what lesson awaited him on the other side. The cold air outside the building bit at Jack as he stepped into the blinding light of a sun that felt oddly invigorating. For a brief moment, he felt suspended in time, as if the challenge ahead could be momentarily stalled. He inhaled deeply, taking in the atmosphere of a city that felt both familiar and foreign, like an old friend who had changed while he hadn't tea. Outside, the sound of honking cars and distant conversations reminded him of the chaotic world he had immersed himself in. Yet here he stood, on the precipice of a personal revolution. He glanced at his rival, who loomed like a specter of his past, and Jack's heart raced. The moment felt charged with electric intensity, potent with the desire to shift the course of his life. The rival leaned against a sleek black car, arms crossed, a smirk plastered across his face. "You think you can intimidate me with a speech about loyalty and fatherhood? This is business. You're out of your depth." Jack's jaw tightened. His instinct urged him to deliver a sharp retort, to shatter the smug complacency of the man before him. But he paused, surrendering to an unfamiliar impulse. Clarity. Perhaps this moment was not about defiance. It was about strategy, understanding his adversary while revealing his authentic self. "I know this isn't personal for you," Jack said, measuring his words like a craftsman selecting tools. "But for me, it transcends profits and losses." His voice resonated, steady, but beneath lay an undercurrent of vulnerability. "I'm fighting for my family. My daughter deserves a father who stands tall. Not just in business, but in life." The rival's expression shifted just a flicker, but Jack caught it. The confident mask cracked, and beneath it lay the anxiety that accompanied someone all too familiar with being challenged. Jack noticed the subtle twitch in the man's jaw and the slight narrowing of his eyes. It was a reminder that even titans carried their own insecurities. "Well, good luck to you," the rival finally replied with forced bravado, but something in his tone suggested uncertainty. This was Jack's moment to seize control, not with anger, but with the strength that rose from authenticity. Images of Lily danced in Jack's mind, her innocent laughter merging with the goals he had set for himself as a father. This confrontation was not just about standing strong against a rival. It was a stepping stone toward becoming the man he had always yearned to be. His voice grew firmer, fueled by conviction. Every decision I make reflects on her. I refuse to let fear dictate my responses any longer. This company is built on values, resilience, and the belief that we can do better together. As he continued, Jack felt a surge within him, a burgeoning awareness of his own capabilities, a recognition of power shaped by both triumphs and failures. If this man before him perceived weakness, then he was sorely mistaken. Jack embraced his insecurities as part of the intricate tapestry that had formed him, and they fueled his resolve rather than diminish it. "Let us deal with this properly," he said, avoiding any lingering bitterness. "I will not compromise my principles or my family for the sake of competition. I want to draw lines with respect, not hatred." He extended his hand, an invitation rather than a challenge. The rival hesitated, the weight of Jack's words hanging palpably between them. It was an invitation to reconsider, to engage on neutral ground. If nothing else, this act symbolized a new direction for Jack, not just in business dealings but in his self-definition. Yet, an unsettling thought crossed Jack's mind: could the very choice he was making invite confrontation or reconciliation? What if this gesture was seen as a weakness, not strength? The rival finally uncrossed his arms, glancing at Jack's outstretched hand, indecision flickering across his face. Would he accept and risk a potential shift in his own narrative? Or would he retreat into the shadows of competition, comforted by their preordained animosity? As Jack held his breath, waiting for a response, he realized the deepest lesson lay ahead, confronting not just his rival, but the internal battles that raged within. And in this pursuit, he would discover exactly what he was made of, for better or for worse. And just as that realization sunk deep, the rival stepped forward, hand poised for a shake. But what unfolded next would bend the trajectory of both their lives forever. Would he embrace the call for integrity, or descend deeper into the corporate abyss? The rival's hand hovered, the weight of the moment heavy in the air. Time felt condensed, and Jack's pulse quickened, questioning whether this confrontation would simply reaffirm his old patterns or propel him into uncharted territory. He had anticipated hostility, and yet here he was, offering the chance for dialogue and mutual respect. Finally, the rival met Jack's palm with a firm handshake. The connection was electric, fraught with unspoken potential, yet Jack could feel the underlying tension. This wasn't just a handshake. It was a fragile truce, a fragile understanding that would either build a bridge or ignite a deeper divide. "Let us see if you can sustain this respect in the pressure of the coming quarter," the rival said, the smirk briefly fading as a serious shadow crossed his brow. "Words are easy, Jack. Action, that's the real test." As they withdrew their hands, Jack sensed the challenge beneath the surface. Here was a chance not merely for survival in the cutthroat business world, but also an opportunity to illustrate his newfound authenticity. What the rival didn't realize was that Jack's transformation began long before this moment. Returning to his car, Jack felt invigorated, almost buoyant. The city unfolded around him and, for the first time, it no longer felt like a canvas of obstacles. Instead, it was a landscape of possibility, a stage set for his evolution. He recalled Lily's cheerful drawings, hung crookedly on the fridge, and the relentless reminder she provided about the importance of being true to oneself. Yet, as he navigated through early morning traffic, a flicker of doubt crept in. What if he couldn't maintain this newfound wisdom? Every past failure echoed with a haunting reminder of missed opportunities. Jack grappled with the reality that his ambition had often clouded good judgment. He had been a man who chased success without consideration for the costs, and now the true challenge loomed ahead. Sustaining this integrity. Arriving at the office, the weight of the world settled back onto his shoulders. The buzz of colleagues intensified the familiar chaos. Jack could almost taste the enthusiasm mixed with the anxiety flooding the air. This was the domain where he had once operated from a place of ego, where every decision felt like a game of survival, each maneuver calculated for supremacy over others. But today he felt different, ready to redefine how he led. Standing before his team, he realized he had a choice. Would he revert to his old ways, or could he inspire authenticity in others? Jack's voice carried a new cadence as he spoke. We are going to challenge the way we think about success this quarter. It's not just about numbers, but about how we uphold our values. The room fell silent, eyes wide with a mixture of surprise and skepticism. Jack could see the questions swimming beneath the surface. Had he truly changed? Or was this just another ploy in the corporate chess game? Look, I know I've been all about the bottom line, but it's time I admit that we're in this together. We need to support one another if we want to thrive. His vulnerability hung palpably in the air, a stark contrast to the bravado that once characterized his leadership. As he finished speaking, a ripple of murmurs spread throughout the group. Jack could feel the gravity of their gazes, weighing him down yet also lifting him with the promise of potential kinship. He wasn't just leading a team, he was inviting them to embrace a collective journey of growth. Then, just as suspicion began to fade, a voice cut through the silence, the head of the marketing department, skeptical and weary. And what will you do when the pressure mounts, Jack? When profits are at stake? Will you fold, or will you stay true? Her question hung in the air, igniting an internal conflict. Jack's heart raced as he thought of the rising pressure, the deadlines looming, and the expectations crushing down. Could he prioritize values over numbers when the stakes felt overwhelming? Jack took a deep breath, the answer forming like an ember in his mind, ready to ignite. That's precisely why I'm standing here, open to this shift. It's time for me to not just act, but also be accountable to all of you and myself. As whispers of concern mingled with the sense of apprehension in the room, Jack recognized the inevitable tension in facing his fears. He would have to prove his commitment not just in words, but through the rigorous trials that lay ahead. And as he stood there, contemplating the risk, he understood that the time had come to face the inevitable confrontation not just with the world around him, but with the very essence of who he had been and who he aspired to become. But before he could delve deeper into his thoughts, Jack received a notification on his phone. It flashed a chilling message. You've got a wild card in play. Prepare for the unexpected. The team's energy buzzed with uncertainty, and Jack knew this was just the beginning of a tumultuous journey that would test every ounce of his resolve. How would he navigate the storms ahead? And would he truly emerge as the man he envisioned? The notification pulsed at the forefront of Jack's thoughts like a troubling heartbeat, fueling a mixture of anxiety and resolve. He slipped his phone back into his pocket, focusing on the room around him. Whispers were spreading, a low hum of doubt, and Jack could almost taste the fear as he stood there. The faces of his team, once blank slates to him, now a blend of uncertainty and expectation, invited yet another choice. Camera lenses of reflexivity turned inward as he considered how each member had their own hunger for success tied to his leadership. Jack understood that every potent narrative in the world of business can be reduced to personal experiences and relationships. He was no longer fighting against the very system he had sought to dominate. Instead, he was stepping into the chaos, ready to forge connections that could withstand the oncoming storm. Let us break this down, team, he said, his voice steadied by an undercurrent of courage. I know we have a mountain of pressures ahead of us, but perhaps we can take these challenges and reframe them as opportunities together. The skepticism remained palpable, but Jack could sense a subtle shift among the group as he projected vulnerability and honesty. The marketing head, who had posed the question, leaned forward, her brows furrowed, processing the potential of this collaboration against the backdrop of their high-stakes environment. We need to communicate more effectively. What happens every time we feel that crunch? She said. It's about sacrificing creativity for numbers. Are we expecting wounds to heal while still wanting to bandage them with profit margins? Jack nodded, impressed by her willingness to engage. Exactly. What if we create a culture that nurtures our ideas while keeping our vision clear? I want each of you to see the larger picture. What are the ways we can align our personal values with our professional goals? The discussion flowed, diverse perspectives bouncing through the air, stirring a blend of hope and critical dissent. Jack felt the energy shift, realizing that this wasn't merely about him leading, it was about them collectively redefining the journey. Yet, within that promising atmosphere, a creeping doubt settled in Jack's mind. These were just discussions. The real test was still ahead when the pressure mounted, the stakes inflated. His team's trust was fragile, and the wild card looming over him felt heavy. What if he failed to deliver when it mattered most? He needed a plan, not just a strategic one, but also a personal manifesto to reinforce his intention. The thought of failing now had weaponized itself in an agonizing spiral of what-ifs. As he listened to the unfolding strategies around him, he realized he could combat those fears by making a commitment and engagement to himself to remain present during those challenges, to honor every word spoken today with tangible action tomorrow. No longer just a player in a survival game, Jack was navigating a deeper moral crossroads. The face-off with his former ego had just begun, and he needed to set clear boundaries. By the end of the meeting, the team had ideated several actionable steps aligned with their values, projects that held meaning beyond mere metrics. Rainy days ahead weren't shadows to avoid, but openings for innovation. As he took a breath of relief, the notification buzzed in his pocket again, its ominous note startling him. The message read, "It's not just business. It's personal." With every fiber of his being alert, he recognized how the connection he sought with his team would bring challenges unfathomable. Jack understood the stakes were transforming to a personal level, a narrative where his past would become visible, waiting to be addressed. Uncertainty clawed at him, but within that uncertainty was a strange sense of sizzling anticipation. Each dilemma held the potential for reconciliation or ruin. Jack stood to leave, determination crystallizing in his chest. How could he redefine himself under the pressures yet to come, and what would that mean for those who depended on him? Shadow of doubt loomed over his journey, but it was intertwined with a growing resolve, driving him toward something greater. As he stepped away from the meeting room, the last thought lingered like smoke in his mind. He would have to confront a facet of himself previously untouched. Time would reveal if those buried fears could resurface as the very catalyst for his evolution. Stepping out of the meeting room, Jack was enveloped in the cool air of the corridor, the frenetic pulse of the office dimming momentarily as he mentally processed the dialogues that had just transpired. The confident exterior he'd crafted through years of climbing the corporate ladder felt fragile in the wake of the notification's ominous message. It wasn't just business, it was personal. Each step he took was laden with questions about how much of the past he was willing to unearth and confront. As he walked, he recalled the faces of his team filled with expectation and hope. They had leaned on him not simply for direction, but for inspiration. Perhaps this was a turning point, he thought, one where his leadership could transcend mere authority and foster genuine connection. Yet the looming sensation in his gut warned him of the risks involved. Could he genuinely create a culture of vulnerability and trust when his own path seemed riddled with uncertainties? Sitting at his desk, he reviewed the notes from the meeting, but his thoughts drifted to a pivotal moment in his early career. He had missed opportunities due to hesitation, tethered by an unyielding belief that perfection was essential for progress. He now understood that growth emerged through messy, authentic exchanges, forged in the fires of uncertainty. The recollection was both empowering and unsettling. He was not just recalling lessons but reliving the weight of decisions that had shaped him. Underneath the polished veneer of his professional life, Jack felt fragments of a young man who had battled the fear of failure alone. Memories of that loneliness flickered, reminding him of the times he chose isolation over collaboration. Would he allow that version of himself to resurface? The answer loomed just out of reach, as a sense of dread settled back in. Determined to confront the past this time, he crafted a personal manifesto, his first step toward deeper self-awareness. The pages were filled with reflections, each line illuminating lessons from mistakes made and triumphs cherished. He wrote about the value of vulnerability and the necessity of a robust team dynamic. Words poured out, embedding a commitment within his psyche. He would no longer bow to fear. He would lead by showing up, even when it meant facing discomfort. Moments later, Jack received a call from Sarah, his direct report in the marketing department. "Hey, can we talk? I think I've stumbled across something big." Her voice burst with energy. "Absolutely," Jack replied, sensing an opportunity to bridge the gap between uncertainty and action. Sarah had previously been hesitant to share her ideas, but now she seemed invigorated, perhaps by the discussions of the day. As they convened in a nearby conference room, her enthusiasm was contagious. She detailed a new campaign, one that could revolutionize their approach to customer engagement, invoking the very values they discussed earlier. Here was a chance to not only innovate but to actively implement their earlier insights about creativity and communication. "Jack, I think this could redefine how we connect with our audience," she said, her eyes bright. "We can challenge the notion that profits must come at the expense of creativity." Her words resonated within him, catalyzing a realization this was exactly how he envisioned leadership: to empower, to inspire, and to innovate together. Yet, as they moved deeper into the conversation, doubt resurfaced momentarily. What if this campaign faltered? What if his commitment to openness and vulnerability led to professional failure? The storm of uncertainty gathered, and he felt the need to shield his past, to retreat into the cynicism he had fought so hard to escape. "No more what-ifs," he whispered under his breath, almost as if coining this new mantra for himself. Instead of deflecting fear, he would face it head-on. After their meeting ended, Jack knew the atmosphere had shifted. There was potential in the air, a possibility of tangible change rooted in authenticity. But just as he felt buoyed by hope, his phone buzzed again, a stark reminder that uncertainties wouldn't evaporate overnight. The notification simply read, "Consider the consequences of revealing your past." As he stared at the screen, he was struck by a deeper realization. The battle he faced was not merely against external pressures but an internal reckoning between the man he was and the leader he aspired to become. That convergence, messy but beautiful, could become the driving force of his evolution. What would it take for Jack to finally embrace the entirety of his journey, the fears, the lessons, and the raw humanity that lay at his core? He had just taken the first step toward a newfound freedom, yet the path ahead remained steep and fraught with emotional complexity. The moment of truth was closing in, and it was time to face not only the consequences but the exhilarating liberation of being wholly himself. Jack leaned back in his chair, staring at the swirling patterns on the ceiling, the buzz of office activity fading to a distant hum. His thoughts circled like moths around a flame, drawn to the uncertain brilliance of his next steps. Fear, that familiar specter, danced at the periphery of his mind. But now there was a flicker of resolve igniting within. The meeting with Sarah had created ripples in his consciousness, and he realized he sat at a crossroads. The prospect of launching an innovative campaign was thrilling, but it also forced a confrontation with aspects of himself he had long buried. Was he ready to be the leader who championed vulnerability while confronting his own demons? He pulled out his manifesto again, the words on the page a testament to his growth. Admitting weakness was a precursor to strength, yet a part of him resisted the idea. What if revealing his past led to perceptions of ineptitude rather than a connection? Was the risk worth the potential reward? With every question, the clock ticked loudly in the background, boosting the urgency of his decision. The following day, he gathered his team for a brainstorming session. The initial air was thick with trepidation. Everyone was eyeing each other, unsure of how to proceed. As Jack addressed them, the weight of his manifesto hung heavily in his mind, a reminder of the commitment he had made to lead differently. "I want us to think beyond the realm of profits and strategies. I want authenticity," he declared, hoping to break the veil of silence that surrounded them. The room quieted, a moment of stillness pregnant with expectation. Then, Sarah spoke up, emboldened by his turn in leadership. "I think we need to share more personal stories to connect with our audience emotionally," she said. The words landed on Jack like a breath of fresh air. This was the spark he needed. The idea of weaving personal narratives into their marketing campaign resonated deeply with him. "Great idea, Sarah. But how about we not just share our audience's stories but our own?" He watched their reactions, uncertainty etched on their faces. "I know it's uncomfortable, but if we want to build a connection, we must be willing to show who we truly are." Heads nodded slowly, the collective apprehension of vulnerability beginning to shift toward curiosity. As they delved into brainstorming, Jack saw the room come alive, an improv performance of creativity, inspired contributions flowing like a river cutting through the mountains of doubt. They connected ideas, challenged each other as thoughts, and laughed something that had seemed in short supply lately. And yet, a sliver of doubt crept back in. Were they ready for revelations? What secrets might surface amid these discussions? With the meeting wrapping up, Jack felt a twinge of nervous anticipation regarding the next steps. After the session, he approached Sarah, his curiosity piqued. "How did you find the conversation? Was I too direct?" Sarah's expression brightened. "No, it felt necessary. Your willingness to share made all the difference," she responded, and Jack was struck by the sincerity behind her words. That night, Jack sat alone with a notebook, reflecting on the day's breakthroughs. Ideas for the campaign blossomed, intertwined with elements of personal storytelling. He penned down examples from his own life, tapping into memories he long feared would undermine his authority. But as he wrote, his mind drifted back to the notification he received earlier, the one urging him to consider the consequences of revealing his past. Doubts overwhelmed him again, thickening the atmosphere in the room. Did he truly want this level of exposure? In that moment of silence, Jack realized he was standing on the precipice of transformation. Facing his past became not only a professional imperative but a personal necessity. The contours of his identity were shifting. To step forward as the leader he aspired to be, he would need to fully own his story, blemishes, and all as dawn broke the next day. Jack could feel the weight of his intentions pressing against him, heavy yet liberating. He was about to step into a new chapter of leadership, a chapter where reliance on others strengthened his resolve, and where his own vulnerabilities could forge deeper connections. Could sharing his past facilitate a more inclusive work culture? And what would he discover about himself on this demanding journey? The answers lay ahead, lurking just beyond the horizon, waiting for Jack to summon the courage to embrace them. The moment of reckoning loomed ever closer. With renewed focus, Jack prepared for the next wave of challenges that awaited him in the corporate arena. The air in the office buzzed with anticipation. The team had embraced the directive for authenticity, and, as Jack walked through the halls, he felt the weight of the company's history wash over him. Today marked the day of the campaign's launch, a culmination of the dialogues, teamwork, and honesty they had explored together. He had shattered the barriers of egotism built over years, and now, the excitement propelled him toward a pivotal moment. Sitting in the conference room, he reviewed the final details. The marketing team had crafted a bold narrative that fused their innovative approach with personal experiences. Stories of triumph, failure, love, and growth intertwined seamlessly with their brand's message. This wasn't just a campaign. It was a reflection of their collective commitment to change. The clock ticked closer to the launch hour, palpably intensifying the air around them. As Jack glanced around the room, he recognized the faces of individuals who had placed their faith in him. They, too, stood on the brink of transformation, and he couldn't help but feel a swell of pride. This was no longer about him alone. It was about everyone daring to step beyond the conventional into a territory where vulnerability would serve as the foundation of a strong organization. Just then, Sarah entered, a radiant determination lighting her path. "This is it, Jack. Are you ready?" Jack nodded, feeling his heart race with the thrill of the unknown. "We're about to change everything. Are we prepared for the repercussions?" he asked. "Absolutely," Sarah replied, her voice unwavering. "We've created a space that encourages dialogue. The audience will respond to our authenticity." As the countdown began, Jack steadied himself, invigorated by the realization that this was not merely a launch. It was a declaration, a manifesto of who he had become. The challenges he faced were not obstacles. They were opportunities for growth, both for himself and for his team. The campaign unfolded like music in harmony, with elements of storytelling engaging viewers on a deeper emotional level. Watching the reactions flow in real time, Jack felt the tide of apprehension wash away, replaced by a surge of exhilaration. The success of the campaign validated his efforts to embrace vulnerability. Messages poured in, reflecting the sentiments he had hoped to inspire: connection, resilience, and understanding. "Jack, we're trending!" An excited voice rang out from the back. Positive responses flooded in, with customers relating to the stories of struggle and triumph. At that moment, Jack knew he had conquered more than just a marketing challenge. He had ignited a movement rooted in shared humanity. As he processed the success, another thought bubbled to the surface. Sarah approached him, excitement bubbling over. "This is only the beginning. What if we push our message even further? We could develop community outreach programs inspired by our customers' stories." In that instant, a profound realization engulfed Jack. This was not just about the brand but about fostering connections beyond the office walls. By championing personal narratives, they could uplift others who faced their own struggles while engaging with their brand on a deeply human level. His journey towards enlightening leadership had transformed him, enabling a perspective shift that redefined his approach to business. "Let's do it," he said decisively, his voice filled with newfound clarity. "Let us design programs that truly echo our values." He felt a solid confidence rise within him. Jack was no longer just the head of a firm but a leader poised to enact real, meaningful change. Days turned to weeks, and as the community outreach programs took shape, Jack's influence extended through the streets of the city. His face became recognized not just as the helm of a tech powerhouse, but as a figure advocating for authentic connections and compassion in business. The overwhelming pride that surged within him went beyond recognition. It was embedded in knowing he had become the father Lily deserved, the leader his team needed, and a beacon for lost souls seeking inspiration. Months later, an award ceremony celebrating social business practices invited him on stage to receive heartfelt commendation for his pioneering work. As the audience applauded, Jack looked back at how far he had come from an isolated businessman to a man defined by courage and connection. The echoes of his daughter's laughter resonated in his mind, mingling perfectly with the praises. He had chosen to let love guide his decisions, truly embracing fatherhood and leadership. Standing there, in that moment of recognition, Jack knew he had accomplished more than he had ever envisioned. He had proven to himself that authentic connection with others, the kind rooted in transparency and vulnerability, was the real measure of success. Each choice had led him to embrace his complexities, and every challenge transformed into powerful growth. Jack's transformation, ultimately intertwined with Lily's laughter and the lessons learned through collaboration, demonstrated that true fulfillment lay not in individual accolades but in the shared journey of overcoming adversity together. And with that profound understanding blooming within him, he took a deep breath, smiling as he stepped forward into the light of his new narrative. Now is the time to act. Don't miss the chance to witness more incredible journeys of personal transformation. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to show your support and help fuel the algorithm. Every single gesture makes a difference. Drop a comment down below sharing your reactions and theories about this impactful ending. And please, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who absolutely need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to spread the message of overcoming and connection.